We're living in a digital world, but only 0.3% of professionals know how to program, how to code. How can we keep going with only 0.3% doing the development work to create everything that the other 99.7% of professionals who need to use in their work? Recently, a group of companies has started to challenge this status quo. These companies are building what have become known as no-code solutions or no-code tools that allow non-technical people to create digital products. In this series of videos, we're going to talk to some of the people behind these companies. These are some of the movers and the shakers that are helping to push forward the no-code movement. Today we're receiving here Sasa Janicijevic. He's one of the founders and leader of Codemap.io, which is a company that's helping to provide a bridge between people that need development work and no-code developers, right? Sasha, how would you describe what Codemap does?
Yeah,
in your own terms.
Thanks so much for having me on the podcast and for the intro. So basically what we do is we connect no-code developers, automation experts, and low-code experts with clients who are looking to basically build software without code, anything from simple websites to full-fledged applications. And then, of course, it's about connecting clients with the right experts that have the right expertise, and use the right tool stack depending on what the requirements are.
How did you come up with the idea for creating because it's like a marketplace. You have people that need some kind of job, and you have companies that have projects and they need people. So you created a marketplace for them to match. So how did you come up with this idea? What was the problem that you probably were facing before creating this kind of solution?
Sure. So basically, just a bit about my background. So I worked in management consulting for quite a long time, and my first startup was actually job marketplace for the pharma industry. So because I worked in pharma management consulting and strategy consulting, so naturally it came to me as sort of a space that I was aware of and that I knew quite well. So that was in 2017, and I'm a non-technical founder. So even today, I don't know how to code. So essentially, that was one of the biggest obstacles I faced even then. And we started developing that platform and got to sort of an MVP stage. But it took way longer than I expected. And with code, it's just obviously it is what it is. It's longer. It's tougher. Iterating a product it's much more difficult and complex than what you have with no code, and that's fine. But I guess I wasn't entirely aware of that process when I got started with the first startup. And so after those struggles, which I'm sure many share, and many entrepreneurs that don't know how to code, that are not technical, that don't have a technical background, after that I found out about no code, and so basically started getting into it, and I learned how to use Bubble first. And so the more I was looking into the space, which I still feel is fairly new, it's kind of a new industry still, even though you could argue that you have WordPress and Wix and all these website builders and some of these softwares like, some of the low-code platforms that have been around for a while, but really the exposure that no code is getting now, I would say, is fairly new. And so when I started getting into it, I saw that there's more and more requests for no code experts in different forums, social networks, social media, etc. And basically it kind of sparked the interest and sort of the first idea in my head about creating a freelance platform that specialized for no-code experts, and that was kind of the first step. And I think it's more about for me initially was just thinking about what's out there already, some of the other freelance platforms that are available, and how does this differentiate it. And then I understood that, at least in my opinion, even today, the biggest part of this is really education, because, you know, when you go to Upwork or Fiverr or anywhere else, you know, you know what you're expecting already, you know what to expect, I guess. But I've seen that, as many have sort of confirmed to this point, that this educational piece in no code is a very big thing, because many clients don't really know what it is yet. You know, what do you use? Which tools do you use? Depending on, it's so personalized, and depending on what you're trying to build. So that's why I think there was an actual justification why you would consider this to be an expertise, you know, and why people would go somewhere to a place where, okay, this is the right, you know, site for me. This is the right marketplace, because there are people here who specifically work in no-code tools. They can advise me, they can consult me, depending on what I already have or what I want to build, and they can sort of help me get to where I want to be. So I think that was the first thing I was thinking about, whether there's actually justification for this specialization. And the more we, you know, are in this now for, I believe, about 4 months since we launched, the more we see that that's actually true, especially when you account for the complexities of automation and integration of different platforms with what people natively build in one tool. And I think that's where the real complexity comes in. And, you know, many of the experts, they might use 1 or 2 platforms to develop, but then they also need to be proficient in different tools to know how to integrate. Many requests actually also include workflow automation. So people need to, experts need to know how to use Zapier and Integromat in many cases. So it really depends, but it can be quite complex. So I think, you know, we're seeing that there's definitely a good, you know, good solid feedback from the client side. And, you know, I think the fact that we've had the traction that we have is kind of, you know, just proving that there is a need for this in the market. So I'm pretty happy with where we are.
We've seen mostly 2 kinds of people demanding no-code development. On one side, you have entrepreneurs wanting to create something that don't have a business yet, and see this as an opportunity to create something faster. And on the other side, we see companies that need to handle development for stuff that they weren't able to do before. They couldn't meet the demand, but that they are now finding that it might be possible to handle with no-code tools. And in that last case, integration is almost mandatory, right? And in the first case, we've seen a lot of on the entrepreneur side of things, we've seen a lot of people that haven't really come around to the idea that they need to learn more about an ecosystem. And we still see a lot of people thinking that they need to learn like one tool, as if, you know, we always like to make the comparison that if you only have a hammer, everything that you look at is a nail. But not always what you have. The problem is a nail that you can hit on the head with a hammer. You need to use different tools in different situations. And from what I understand from what you just said, that is also the way you view this space. But I'd like to get some feedback from you on how do you see this playing out with the people that are coming into no code as the people that actually are learning to do it. Are you seeing them come into this space more with one mindset or more with the other, like a single tool thing, or more of the integration of components?
Yeah, I think it's also, I guess, pretty tough question to answer, because I don't think, I'm not sure if there's a pattern, but the way we look at it is automation, specifically, for example, automation and integrations, they've been around for quite a long time. And, you know, the more this is coming up now on its own, on the other side, you have no-code development, which is kind of getting into the mix. And people that we see on the marketplace, most of them, in terms of experts and agencies, most of them have at least some proficiency with automation and integrations. I don't think we do have people that, experts that specifically are specializing in one or two tools, but alongside that, they have had project experiences where they simply needed to obviously do API integrations. They maybe needed to do some automations through Zapier or Integromat. So basically, I can see that already at this point, most people do have some experience with that. So I think people that are coming in and that might not have had any background with automation or no code or even traditional development, I guess so to say, they might start off with one or two tools. They depending on what they like most. It could be Bubble or Glide or Adalo. I think that's the right way to pronounce it. So they might start with something and get good at that, but then also as they start their freelance career, I think they're going to start seeing what the requests are that are coming from the client side, and they'll probably start seeing that, the more they know, obviously, and the wider the skill set, the more requests they can actually handle themselves without the client needing to, let's say, hire 2 or 3 people to do a full project. So I think, that the starting point might be getting good at 1 or 2 tools. And then obviously, the better you are with automation and the more experience you have with integration, it's just going to, I guess, increase your appeal in terms of how clients view your expertise and how well you're going to be, how good of a fit you're going to be for projects. Because from the projects, and we've had at this point really quite a lot of projects on the marketplace in different tools, we can see that almost every request is related to some sort of an integration. There is some automation to it. There are requests where people are building MVPs that might not yet need integrations or more complex workflows, but I think everybody's already thinking about where they're going to want to be in 6 to 12 months. So people are already kind of implementing these requests into the project post, for example, that they put onto the marketplace. So most of them do already include that type of work.
That's really interesting because when you come from a corporate side, and I came from a corporate side, I was to be the CIO for international companies. Integration and automation is a daily problem because you have usually problems inside the company to do automations because there are some kinds of processes that are not working well because they need people and people are not doing it in the correct manner. So if you automate, you can get better results. But there are also problems related to putting new clients or onboarding clients and providers or vendors. At the moment that this complexity in terms of supply chain comes into, integration is mandatory. And what lacks is people that can do it easily and in a frame. So that's for me a huge space for no-code tools, because if you put these tools in place, you can onboard more clients and you can, of course, make your supply chain work better. And best of all, the processes inside of the company can work smoothly, what is very important for competition at this time. So it's interesting that you are telling us that the numbers that you are getting into the platform is aligned with my vision. Of course, it's very important for the entrepreneurs having a way to start their business on without depending on developers, because it's hard to find developers and the cost is usually complicated for someone that is trying to start something up. So it's also important for the two sides. So in terms of numbers, can you share some numbers of what is happening into what you are doing right now?
Yeah, in terms of like our traction on the marketplace, we're now at, I believe, over $800,000 worth of projects in the last 4 months. So we've had quite a lot of traction. We have several hundred experts who we've approved. We have received a lot of applications. But obviously, we're trying to also make sure that experts that are onboarded onto the marketplace are vetted. So we do vet all the profiles and just make sure that the experience is there, that there's some prior work that the expert has done, that they have not necessarily, you can be a beginner in no code in terms of even in your freelance career, you could be just sort of starting out, and we want to definitely give people of that profile an opportunity as well. But there needs to be a certain level of expertise and experience in different no-code tools, or as I said, it could be even designers. There's a lot of designers, for example, in Webflow that are now upskilling to some other tools as well. So we see it as if you're good at one tool or in one area, that's totally fine. And this is what we're trying to consider in our vetting process. And then when you actually get onto the marketplace, you can always upskill, you can develop further. When you work with clients, you can choose to implement new tools into your tool stack, and that's totally fine. But we do have the initial vetting process just to make sure that that there's quality on the talent side right off the bat, and then also we do the same with clients, because we want to make sure that the projects that come onto the marketplace are actually real vetted projects by clients who are looking for experts right now. Because when you leave the site open, I think that's fairly common. You can always have a lot of, I guess, empty traffic, so to speak, potentially people creating profiles just to sort of see what's in there, and that creates problems because it I think reduces the credibility of the marketplace. So we just want to make sure that to keep it curated with the best intention of having quality on both sides. So we've had dozens of hires so far in terms of the sort of conversion. We've had dozens of hires on the marketplace also in the past 4 months. We haven't invested really anything in marketing. Generally, our strategy has been just to get the word out there and to work across different channels to let people know about Codemap, to acquire experts and projects. So we're sort of entering a new phase at this point, but so far I'm really happy with how things have been going, and we've gotten some really great feedback from users on both sides. Very positive feedback, obviously constructive feedback as well, some of the changes and optimizations of current features, new additions to what we already have, and so we're working on some upgrades right now. But generally speaking, really happy with the traction, and at this point, just want to thank everybody for using Codemap. Of course, anybody who might be seeing this, because it was really, really amazing for us to see what's been happening over the last 4 months.
From what you described from your previous experience, I take it that Codemap has been developed with a no-code tool.
Yeah, that's right. We developed pretty much. I developed the platform in Bubble.
So, and you, as you said, you're not a technical founder, but you actually become your own developer. So, from the entrepreneur's point of view, having been through these two phases in your life, when you were hiring development for your previous marketplace and Codemap now, how do you compare it as an entrepreneur?
Day and night, honestly, even today, I can't imagine that something, I just can't believe something like this is possible in terms of time to market, because the situation I was in with developers, because at the time we were hiring agencies to support the development of our MVP. Even with having better teams or less good teams doing that for you, I think it's still a process that takes a very long time if you're still if you're developing from scratch. And I don't mean to say anything negative about that, because without code there would be no code. So I always say that, and I think it's absolutely fair to say it. And we see developers, programmers who have this technical knowledge. I think that is something you can't just replace, because, for example, if I'm developing in Bubble, I can do stuff in Bubble, I can develop some apps. But then if you have a person who has that technical background and knows how to use no-code tools, I'm hardly going to be a match in terms of expertise. And I just think that's realistic. So in any case, the difference for us was, like for me personally, was incredible, because I built Codemap in 2 months alongside our agency work. And then the first startup, the MVP, it took us basically a year and a half with iterations and just trying to fix stuff. And the number of, let's say, in terms of features, if I were to compare the two products, because they were actually both marketplaces. So that one was a full-time basically a marketplace for full-time jobs. This one is freelance and contract marketplace. So it's a different workflow inside, I guess, in terms of the main interaction that's happening. But still, the features generally, if I were to compare the features and the amount of features, I built in 2 months on Bubble what was maybe 80% of that, which we had after a year and a half with code and for the first startup. So basically in 2 months, I built 20% more in Bubble than what it took us for a year and a half to build, and in 4 months to be where we are, as opposed to having that product at the end, which was just not working right. And, you had all sorts of issues onboarding people during the registration process, and everything is it's just incredible. Because, this was in October when we launched. Now it's February, and the platform is up and running. There's people signing up, and, people getting hired left and right. And I think that's just, compared to almost 2 years spent at the first startup, it's just incredible. And I don't know, I didn't even get used to that yet, honestly. And I think this barrier that's now getting removed, at least when it comes to, I think NOCODE can do way more than just produce MVPs. And it's starting to be proven right now. But I would just say, specifically for this segment, for this, population of entrepreneurs who are non-technical founders, I think, this is a major sort of moving of the needle, because you're able to get something out that was your initial idea. If somebody helps you along the way, if you need to hire an expert or whatever, I think the amount of money you're going to spend is going to be just so much less. And even if you learn how to do it yourself, you'll still be able to do it in way less time and give this a test, and whatever your idea is, get it out there to start getting some early users and start getting feedback. And I think the time difference to get to market is just huge.
It's good to hear that it took or you made everything 7-8 times faster using no code than when you compare doing the regular manner, hiring companies and developers to do the same thing. So it's the number that we talk about, 7, 8, maybe 10 times faster. Of course, we are not comparing in terms of cost, because probably it's much less than 7-8 times in comparison, because when you put people with expertise in place, it costs much more. And that's very interesting to know. But one thing more, you told that you used Bubble. Tell us more about the other tools. If you are using other no-code tools, what is the stack that you are using right now to run Codemap?
Yeah, so we have a lot of integrations on the platform with third-party services, but we don't. The tech stack, so to speak, is currently, we're just doing everything in Bubble, right? So I think the way we see it in terms of scalability, the capabilities that Bubble offers, the robustness of the platform, I think that was a very good choice for us for a marketplace. So we're trying to keep it, as the only development platform that we use. But then, of course, integrations that we already need and that we're going to need, obviously that's a different story. That's going to be integrated with the app. But otherwise, in terms of actual development, I think we're gonna stick to Bubble for quite some time.
And for the, as you said, integrations is something that um, you're suddenly going to need, and you're looking at the kind of tools that you mentioned earlier, Zapier and Integromat,
Yeah.
and then combining that with your application in Bubble. Your experience isn't very different from our own. Like when we developed first the MVP for the community that we have today, we actually did it in 2 weeks using a download. Of course, we have the benefit of both having been programmers since childhood, so that certainly helps, even though it's not really a requirement for you to do this kind of work. But I guess that leads to the question that I wanted to ask, which is, you say you're not a technical developer, technical founder, not developer. But did you have any previous exposure to programming in any way?
Not before the first startup. I basically, I was always interested in tech. Even, for years I've read about it. I knew about, generally speaking, I was fairly informed about what's happening in the startups, in the startup space. From that perspective, I was aware of, I guess, what's out there. Maybe, I'm not even sure, but I would say maybe a little more than an average user of the internet, so to speak. But I really had absolutely no coding knowledge or any exposure to that whatsoever. And for me, that was one of the toughest parts for sure, because even though my background, having been in consulting, I was trained as a project manager, and project management at the end of the day, like broadly speaking, is something that's applied to development or any types of projects. So that was good when I entered the first startup. So I knew, the process and how I could apply it, but then still, obviously, it's very specific in development as well. That was maybe the only part where I had a fairly good understanding of, okay, I don't know development, but I know that you have to have a start, a middle, and a finish, and some milestones during a project. So, I was okay there, but in terms of, how the process actually works, how you coordinate developers, how you, build the front end, the back end, the database, the reviews, and this agile development with sprints. I had no idea about any of that. And so it was really a huge learning curve for me, but also a massive obstacle because, I was really inexperienced with all of that. So worst part, I would say, is when you, especially if you are, paying an agency or anyone really to do something. I'm not saying people have bad intentions or anything, but there's of course varying quality, with different providers, and people who will think 12 steps ahead when you tell them what the specifications are. People who are thinking about scalabilities, the code written in a lean way, and I'm sure you guys know that way better than I do since your background is technical, but you can always kind of plan what this platform is going to be in 2 or 3 years. And maybe you're not going to build it that way now, but you're going to consider it in the approach that you're using. And it's so complex for somebody who's not technical. You could basically, at that point, especially, you could tell me anything and I'd be like, okay, that sounds good, but I have no idea if this is actually, unfortunately, I have no idea if this is something that really is that way, and, is it going to fit with what we're trying to do in the future. So from like an architecture perspective, of the system and the app, it's that was one of the biggest things, I think.
After hearing from you, Sasha, one thing that if I am a no-coder, I'm excited to say, okay, people understood, or at least some people understood this. Those three that are in this conversation understood, but probably more than that because of the numbers that you just told us about. If I am a no-coder, say, okay, what I have to do to go into Codemap and find some job for me. And if I'm in the other side, in my company, a small company, or maybe even bigger than that, and I heard from you, and I want this to have this experience of moving faster. How can I use Codemap if I am a no-coder or if I am a company? How can I go there and start using Codemap?
Sure. So as an expert or an agency, you can go to the site and fill the application and register. As soon as you do, basically during the registration, we're asking for some general information, obviously basic information, and then specifically regarding the expertise, which areas you're an expert in, or for example, there are 3 different levels that we have, so beginner, intermediate, and expert. We're asking for your experience with different tools that you use in different areas, and then also some background, your personal background, employment background, as well as especially when it comes to developers, what kind of functionalities or app types you've been working on. So there's a whole flow during that registration. We tried to, obviously, I know people don't like filling in long registrations and profiles. So we tried to kind of not have everything required right off the bat, but we definitely do need the information up front, at least in that first step, at least enough information to understand someone's experience, and then we do follow-ups, and we sort of have a discussion. Depending on the case, we might set up interviews, we might ask for some more information. We take that process, usually it takes not more than a few days. We've had a bigger volume of applications lately, but still we're trying to process everything within maximum 2 to 3 days or so, and then you will get a response from us, and once you're accepted to the marketplace, you essentially get access to the project search, so the listings of new projects that are published on a daily basis, and you can send proposals and connect with clients immediately. And also, one of the biggest things for us is making sure that clients can also reach out to you. So I think the interaction there has been pretty good so far, and we've gotten some good feedback there. You also get requests from clients, so you can just connect also immediately, even if you don't necessarily see a certain project, or if you're not logged in, or if you don't necessarily send a proposal proactively, clients can still reach out to you for any project, and that way you can see opportunities even if you don't necessarily apply for them or send a proposal. So high level, that's sort of the way the process works. And I'd say, as I said before, we're looking for people who have a solid expertise in a certain area, and then obviously we 100% understand that over time that's going to evolve and that people are going to upskill, so that's not a problem. But yeah, definitely there needs to be a solid level of expertise in at least one area or at least one tool to become an expert. And then the client side really is, we're getting different requests, as I mentioned. So we are trying to do our best to consider that many clients don't necessarily have awareness of what NOCODE is yet. Some have maybe just recently heard about it. So we're trying to tailor the situation and the onboarding process to each client. For example, in certain situations, you'll have clients just basically create an account. We'll vet that on the go just to make sure that, obviously that it's real profile that the client is actually looking to hire. We collect some initial information during the sign up, and then the client posts a project, and you can see that many of them already do know what they want to use, which tool they want to use. And so in that case, we're there if you need us, because we also have an in-app chat. You can always reach out and ask any questions. But in those cases, the clients already know what they're looking for, and they connect with experts and usually proceed just directly to hire somebody they think is a good fit. In other cases, we might get clients reach out to us in the in-app chat when they actually sign up before they create a project. But also what they can do is when they get to the site, on the main page, there is a tool that we have actually partnered with Get Stacked. Michael Novotny, who created a recommendation tool for no-code stacks. So essentially, you fill in a questionnaire, which obviously is going to ask you some questions around what you're trying to build, and based off of that, you will get a recommendation of the recommended tools that you can use for your project. And of course, you can schedule a call with us as well, which the tool is really great. Michael has done a great job with that, because he's keeping up, he's adding more information into that. recommendation tool because he's had over 150 projects with different makers that have built, full-fledged applications, websites, different things. And he's actually, he's done this in a quantitative way where he's basically created some kind of a data structure and is choosing data points and then providing recommendations based off of that. It is already, I think, a very solid tool to give you a pretty good initial understanding of what might be a good fit. Obviously, you can go many different ways, but I think that definitely helps clients in understanding what they might need and point them in the right direction to start looking at some tools rather than the others, depending on what they're trying to build. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is you can obviously schedule a call with us. And in that case, we'll just do a brief introduction. And I think the most important thing there is to really understand what you're trying to do, because if, it could be anything from automation to developing just a website, a simple landing page, to building a full-fledged application with a lot of different features. So in that case, it's on us really to give you an introduction to NOCODE, just understand what you're trying to do, and then provide a recommendation which we feel might be a good fit for what your goal is. And then after you do actually enter the marketplace, we also provide expert recommendations, since we try to have a good understanding generally of who's available when, in terms of when experts actually have bandwidth to work with clients, because obviously if you're multiple projects, you might not be able to respond to requests every time. Many people actually take on a lot of work at the same time, which is great. But generally speaking, we also know the expertise of people because we vetted them while they were entering the marketplace. We collected the information. We've spoken to most of them already many times. So we understand when and how somebody could be a good fit for your project. So if you're looking for someone who's supposed to help you just with developing something in Bubble, not necessarily do integrations, automations, and more complex things, then there's a good fit for that. But then if you're looking for a broader skill set as well, then we can provide expert recommendations directly, and not only account for the expertise but availability, etc., just to make sure that you get in touch with people who might be the best fit for the project, but are also available potentially at that time. So obviously the goal being to hire the best possible person or agency in the shortest possible amount of time, and get started with the project.
Sasha, I want to thank you for taking the time to join us and for sharing with us some of the details of your journey to get Codemap.io on the map, let's say, and also for helping the people there using your platform to also get on the map.
Yeah. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, really, and I really, want to commend you guys for what you're doing with your community. I think that's a step in the best possible direction, which is just sort of bringing more no-code developers and makers and people interested in no-code into this space, and just creating more awareness and education, because I think we're all, to achieve what we all want to achieve, that's going to be necessary just to create this stream of educating people in the right way. And I think that's going to really, it's going to be some big things ahead in the next couple of years, and I think you're going to be a big part of that as well. So thank you, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you guys today. It was a pleasure.
So, thank you, Sasha. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.